This is D'Militant, and you watching Real Black. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. 7 years ago, white men came forth and took this country away from Indians, which I am part of. And it's unfortunate that they took it away from Indians for trinkets. Little BS. Just went ahead and just flashed some stuff to them and took a whole bunch of land. And next thing you know, the Indians were mad, and now they're in casinos, and now they want to go in and take the money from the Indians who are in the casinos. Now, ain't that bullshit? You take their land, then you want to take the money from the casino. It's rough. It's raw. The white man ain't doing the Indian right. I know my shit, goddammit. I ain't gonna let him get away with any goddamn thing. Oh, I don't like the NAACP either. That's a whole nother issue. I don't like the NAACP. We ain't been colored for 40 years, and we wasn't colored then. We were Negro. I think we was colored for about a week. They just threw that in there. We were darkies, then we were Negro, then we were black. That's it. There ain't no real other terms. African American, why we got to be African American? They don't run around telling everybody what kind of American they are. Hawaiian American, well, that's kind of the same thing, ain't it? I guess you should ask me some questions, or you just want me to rattle off? Oh, I can rattle off all day. Oh, okay, all right.
All right, so introduce yourself. And
Okay.
How would you best describe what it is that you do?
Okay. Want to wait till these people pass behind you? Don't want to. They're not in the shot. We ain't got to worry about them. All right. We don't want to scare the white people. All right. This is D'Militant, a.k.a. Darryl Littleton. That is the slave name. What I do is I do social commentary and political comedy. I got my good friend Charles Walden, who is right behind you right there. I'm only going to wave to Charles. How you doing, Charles?
How's people doing? I'm doing good. I'm off drugs. I got my way back. Yeah, like I said, I'm off drugs. You know, I gained 100 pounds. I lost back. So I'm back to normal weight. Thank you for your concerns. God love you. God love me. Talk to you later.
What was your drug of choice?
I'm not sure, but it was something.
Whatever they gave you.
Yeah,
Whatever was on sale.
because I was weak.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Well, power to you, sir. You know, you're really good, man.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, back to it.
I guess I'll give you a call, man, but it's good working with you.
Man, you too.
I love you.
You need to catch this. This is a rare moment where comics actually like each other. I like this man. Most comics don't like each other because it's all competitive, but Charles has always been cool with me. So, all right, here we go back to me again. We don't want to catch me in the last. Right. Okay, cool.
All right, so,
Now,
so social commentary.
Right. Now, I wrote a book called Black Comedians on Black Comedy. I interviewed 125 comedians, including Eddie Murphy, Bernie Mac's, pretty much one of his last print interviews. Also interviewed Timmy Rogers, who was 90 years old, who was the first black man not to wear blackface and wore a tuxedo. Dick Gregory did the introduction on the book. We got Charlie Murphy in the book. We got the Wayans in the book. We've got so many acts, the kings and queens of comedy, DL, Cedric, everybody's in there. Cat Williams is in there. Mike Epps is in there. So we got New Jacks, we got old people, we got Kevin Hart. That's in the book. Now, the book was made into a documentary by Robert Townsend called Why We Laugh, which has been aired on Showtime and its associated stations since Black History Month 2010. That premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2009. That has Bill Cosby, Chris Rock, who is also in the book. It has political leaders, too. It has Andrew Young and Julian Bond. It's got Maxine Waters. It's got Maxine Weldon. It's got so many political figures as well as comedians. You've got Marla Gibbs is in there. Garrett Morris is in there. The Wayans, once again, are also in there as well. Tommy Davidson's in it. It's a great documentary. Covers the whole history of black comedy, just like the book did, all the way from slavery and minstrel, blackface, all the way to current day. So I suggest anybody get it if you like black comedy.
We actually have it here, so you want to hold it up. I can
This is it right here. A lot of people are loose. Okay.
get a shot, you hold it out.
Okay.
So I'll do hang on. Keep your eye contact with the lens.
Okay.
If I come out, then I can cut away.
Got it. Now, this documentary right here, it talks about Robin Harris. A lot of people don't remember Robin Harris. The black comedy boom happened because of Robin Harris. That spawned Chris Tucker. It spawned Ricky Harris. It spawned everybody from the West Coast because of Robin Harris. That's why the West Coast comedians got all the attention they did, and that's where the black comedy boom came from.
Okay, so, all right, so what, just talking about your life as a comedian, what compelled you to write a book?
Okay. I wrote a book about black comedy because I had been a comedian for about 15 years myself when I wrote the book. I had produced BET's Comic View for 3 seasons as an associate and a co-producer. I had written for comics on that show, D.L. Hughley, Cedric the Entertainer, Don D.C. Curry, Montana Taylor, and some more. But what I was noticing was nobody had ever put it in a chronological order that was actually funny, that we could learn from and digest. Everybody talks about athletes, everybody talks about everything else, and you know the history of baseball and football and everything like that, but nobody put the history of black comedy concisely where you could see it. There was a time where it really wasn't necessary because you only had a few black comics of notoriety, and the line was long: Red Fox, Moms Mabley, Flip Wilson, Bill Cosby, people of that ilk. But once the comedy boom came, you had comics coming from everywhere. You had your Sinbads and your Mark Currys and your Jamie Foxxes. And these people needed to be recognized just like the old greats. But then I was wondering, who are the influences of a lot of these comics? Because we have physical comics right now, just like you had physical comics back then. You have intelligent comics. Like, I consider myself a disciple of Dick Gregory, of Paul Mooney, of people like that, even of Lenny Bruce, people who took a newspaper, read it, and then came out and told you what was really going on. And then you have physical comics. Some people like to call them clowns. I don't. I like to call them physical comics. You have people like Arnez J. and Steve Brown, people who jump around and do all kind of antics, just like you had physical comics like Mantan Moreland and Step and Fetch It back in the day. Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle also come from that school of Dick Gregory, using your intelligence to make people laugh but teach them at the same time. So that's what provoked me and motivated me to write the book. I didn't want those people to be lost, and I saw too many young comics that thought comedy started with Martin Lawrence and Def Jam. Martin will even tell you it didn't start with him. He knows where it came from, but he was part of the last generation because Martin started like right before I did. But most of the guys I've worked with, your Tony Roberts, your D.L. Hughleys, Lavelle Crawford, Bruce, Arnez J. All of these guys started in the late 80s, early 90s. Jamie Foxx. We all started around the same time. So as opposed to us just being like what people would call, the New Jack comics call the veterans, we're not. The veterans are people like Ronaldo Ray and John Witherspoon and Paul Mooney and Whoopi Goldberg. Those are the vets. Those are the OGs. We're just carrying the doggone banner. We're a link to a chain. So I did not want the younger comics to lose the fact that they didn't know where they came from and thought the middle was the beginning.
So I mean, is that something that you feel is sort of a, I guess, as there is a change in regard, as more and more people come to the game, I'm just going to switch around.
Okay, sure.
There is a legacy that you were very much aware of when you started, that maybe, I'm getting a sense that maybe you felt like some of the newer comedians didn't feel akin to,
right,
in a way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you recording?
It's okay.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
But at the same time, I guess in the movie, like, they ask questions like, you know, reactions to the N-word and different things like that. I mean, do you feel like there's certain territory that black comedians need to be aware of or take responsibility for in terms of respecting their forefathers? Right.
Okay. We can get into that right now. I feel in any craft that you have to know your foundation. A lot of senior basketball players or retired former NBA players have a problem with some of the younger players because they don't know where their moves came from. They don't have respect for the game in the true sense of working the whole foundation, knowing your basics, so to speak. And I felt that a lot of comics were doing the same thing. It's easy to go up there and steal somebody's jokes that you saw from Comic View or YouTube or Def Jam. But that's not really comedy. That's not the art. That's not the craft of comedy. It's supposed to be about the way you see the world. Nobody sees it the way you do. So what makes it funny to you? That's what it's supposed to be about. Not the guy you saw on YouTube and now you're stealing the material from him. That's not your life. That's not your truth. That's not your reality. And art is not created from stealing. It's just that simple. If you just want to get money and get on a TV show, you'll find your show gonna get canceled real quick because you really don't have anything within here to say. Seinfeld lasted so long because 9 seasons because that was that man's point of view. Other shows that have lasted a long time, you can keep plumbing and plumbing from it because that's the way the guy sees it. You can put it in any situation. If you go to Hawaii, what would you do? You already know because you know this guy's character. It's not bastardized and it's not ripped off. So there is a legacy, and that legacy must be adhered to. Like I said, you got your Robin Harrises, you got your Flip Wilsons, and your Bill Cosbys. A lot of people don't know where the line came from. You had people like Nipsey Russell and George Kirby and Timmy Rogers and Slappy White. America accepted them. Then Dick Gregory came along. And once Dick Gregory was actually talking like a man, not necessarily a black man on stage, they've never seen a black man in a real conversation before with a white man. They had never really seen it before. That's why Dick Gregory blew up. Well, Dick became an activist once Martin Luther King called him up. He thought it was more important for him to do something for his people as opposed to telling jokes. So he became more of an activist. Bill Cosby took that took that baton and ran with it. Once Cosby had established himself, next thing you know, Richard Pryor, who was a Cosby light version when he first came out, developed his own style where it's like, this is who Richard Pryor is. I'm not trying to be like Bill Cosby or any of these other comics. I'm going to be like myself now. Then everybody wanted to be like Richard Pryor. The next guy who came along after Pryor, a lot of people don't know this, 48 Hours was written for Richard Pryor. Beverly Hills Cop was written for Sylvester Stallone. Trading Places was written for Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor had drug problems. We all know that. Well, if a movie company's not going to insure a Richard Pryor, they will insure an Eddie Murphy, who ain't got no drug problems. So Murphy's career came in default by 2 people. There's a guy named Charlie Barnett, who was supposed to have been on Saturday Night Live, but Charlie Barnett had drug problems. Charlie Barnett was an addict. Charlie Barnett is unfortunately dead, but he was a very brilliant comic. They wanted him for Saturday Night Live, but because he had too many drug problems, Eddie Murphy got the job. Richard Pryor, drug problems. Eddie Murphy gets the movie career. So Eddie knows where he owes his career too. It does not remove how brilliant Eddie Murphy is. He was in the right place at the right time.
Also, I guess Charlie couldn't read either.
Right, and Charlie Barnett couldn't read. But you'd be surprised how many comics really cannot read that well right now who have very lucrative careers. They let them ad-lib, they let them just rock and roll with it. A lot of guys don't even read the script. I worked for Cat Williams for 1.5 years. Cat wasn't a voracious script reader, but I dare you to point to too many people that were funnier than him on camera. Cat is absolutely hilarious. Mike Epps don't do a whole lot of reading, but Mike is funny as hell. Chris Tucker, same thing. Chris is funny as hell. He ain't ever going to do no Shakespeare for you, and he doesn't read his scripts that well. They tell him what to do, he does it. He's brilliant. So it's just like jazz musicians who don't read music. Just play the solo when the drum beat hits here, and they're brilliant. So, and a lot of guys play by ear. So I'm not here to judge anybody's style of comedy, how they do their comedy. What I wanted young people, young comics in particular, and what I wanted the public as a whole to know as years go on and generations, if we don't chronicle this stuff now, it's going to get lost. You're not going to know who Moms Mabley is. You're not going to know who Mantan Moreland is, or Stephen Fetchard, or Willie Best. And all this stuff about, those guys were Uncle Toms and this, that, and the other, and they wore blackface and all that. Pigmeat Markham, he did this, and yeah, but you know what? Those were the times right then. 20 years from now, people are going to look back on the Def Jam and Comic View era and say, well, why were they doing that? And why were they falling all on the floor? And why were they talking loud? And every era has a period of adjustment. Just like blaxploitation movies, if they had let them be, those movies would have gotten better. You would have got to the level of Spike Lee and John Singleton. But if you're just starting off being filmmakers, it's going to be raw. It's not going to be refined. And you really actually want that rawness. because you want to know where the head of the artist is coming from. As the artist gets more polished, then his product will get more polished.
Good point. So two, I don't keep you forever. So
No, that's fine.
2 points. I like that thought. Like we're all links in the chain.
Mhm.
If you could do that more concisely, like as a closer. Like,
Okay.
And then, where do you think
Okay.
black comedy is now, where it's heading? But we can. Those are two separate ideas.
Okay, got it. All right. I feel black comedy is all linked by a chain, and it started back in the slavery days. Of course, we didn't have comedians back then, but we did have comedy. We had pantomime, we had innuendo that we had brought over from Africa. Okay, that's what brought in the whole blackface movement. Those brothers were doing their thing back there by the slave shack, and the white man thought that's how Africans actually acted. Well, actually, they were behaving as though the masters. They were acting like the masters, doing all the highfalutin walking around and all that. Well, the white man thought that's how we actually act. So when the white man put on blackface and acted like blacks on stage, he was actually acting like blacks, acting like whites. So that's the inside joke on the minstrel era. It started with white minstrels, went to black minstrels, and you had famous black minstrels. You had a guy named Billy Cursan. You had a guy named Sam Lucas. You had a guy named James Bland. These guys were composers as well as comedians. Then you moved past that into the whole new millennium, which was the 1900s. So after slavery was over and the minstrel era came into fruition, then you had people like your Nipsey Russells and you had your Burt Williamses, and then you had your teams like Miller and Lyles, who invented Amos and Andy. You had teams like that. Then after the teams, after Burt Williams and all that, that's when we moved into the era of your Nipsey Russells and so on and so forth. Like I said, the George Kirbys. Then you had your Red Foxes. Then you had your Dick Gregory's, Bill Cosby's, Richard Pryor's, your Flip Wilson's, Eddie Murphy. Then you had your Martin Lawrence's, your Chris Rocks, your Cat Williams's, your Dave Chappelle's. See, everybody got something by default. Like I said, Eddie Murphy got it because Richard Pryor had drug problems. Martin got it because Eddie had moved on. Dave Chappelle was get it because Martin moved on. They needed another Martin Lawrence. Okay, bam, we got Dave Chappelle. He got a great show. Dave Chappelle bows out. Now we're going to blow up this guy, Cat Williams. Now Cat Williams is bowed out. Now they're blowing up Kevin Hart. So it's all aligned. Even though it looks like there's a whole bunch of comics out there, it's still one after the other, after the other, after the other. They're only still blowing up one really big guy at a time.
That's interesting. I thought we were past that. Sort of like passing the torch or that championship.
It's still that one torch.
Okay.
The Kings of Comedy got in, but they had little small torches to the side. Nobody ever claimed them to be the next guy. If Bernie had lived, he probably would have been.
So where are we now? It's 2010.
Right now, in my book, Black Comedians on Black Comedy, I tried to predict the future of where black comedy is going. To me, black comedy is going along the routes of a Whoopi Goldberg, along the routes of a Kevin Hart. You can no longer just be a single player. You cannot be a designated hitter. You can't be a pinch hitter. You've got to be able to go ahead and play utility. You got to be able to do everything now. You got to be able to produce. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to perform. You got to be able to act. And if you can, direct. Do voiceovers. Do everything possible. Whoopi Goldberg should be the role model of all comedians and most entertainers. Whoopi has done everything in show business that you can do. She has done Broadway. She has done television. She has done film. She has done radio. She has done stage. She has toured. What has that woman not done? So to me, she's underrated, as well as the fact she's on The View right now. She's on Broadway with The Color Purple as a producer right now. That woman stretches her tentacles out. And Kevin Hart, on the male tip, is doing the same thing. The days of, oh, I'm just a comic, those days are basically over because you put too much in the hands of the powers that be. You do not have control if you're just waiting for somebody to put you on a stage. Now, if you can promote that show yourself, or if you're working on other things to help you get to that stage where people want to put you on because now your name is more valuable to them. Is Kevin Hart the funniest comedian in the world? Probably not. Kevin will probably say he's not. But is he one of the most savvy comedians right now? I'd have to say yeah. Because he's funny. He's crossed that magic line of I'm funny enough where I can make a whole room of people laugh, or in a stadium or an arena or a concert hall. But you don't ever have to be the funniest person, because who is? Who is on any given night? It could be anybody. I could have been the funniest guy in the world tonight. Tomorrow night it could be somebody else. It all depends on your audience, really. But at a certain point, you're funny enough. You can go anywhere. If you're a professional, you can go anywhere.
All right, and then we just need a tag.
Okay.
More of like the spotlight. If you look right up at the camera, say your name, and you're watching Real Black. Let me just set focus.
Okay.
Make sure we're looking good there. Okay.
This is D'Militant, and you watching Real Black.
Let's do one more.
All right.